I'm Fatheree,
I'm not Dave. I'm Trick on the Tube.
and this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
Welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 108th Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we talk all about Star Trek all the time. And today I am joined by a very special guest, Truck on the Tube.
Hi. How's everyone doing? It's an honor to be here.
If you have not followed his work on YouTube, he's done some really great stuff on his channel. I definitely recommend checking it out. Surely if you've discovered Tex-Trek, you've already discovered Truck on the Tube. But I do appreciate you taking the time to be here today and talk about Star Trek Lower Decks with me. I understand you're really looking forward to this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is the show in which I have all my beliefs. I think that this show will be the one to save modern Star Trek.
That is a very strong endorsement for a show that we haven't seen yet.
Many people will say that modern Star Trek doesn't need saving, and I would agree with that. It's doing fine.
Yeah, from a business standpoint, they seem to be very happy with it. They keep creating new shows. So
pumping them out.
They wouldn't do that if they weren't happy. So say what you will about Star Trek Discovery, but you can make the argument it might have been the most successful Star Trek show ever, considering how many spin-offs they added to it. But,
yeah,
it's going to trigger
guess.
some people. It's going to trigger some people. I'm not saying it's my favorite. I'm just saying it might be the most successful, depending on how you gauge success.
I would argue that all of these new Star Trek shows have come from the success of Star Trek Discovery, but if Star Trek Discovery had been a completely different Star Trek show, I think there still would be so many spin-offs. It's not because it was Discovery and it was done that specific way that Star Trek is successful. I think there was just a want and a hunger for Star Trek.
There was an
back on TV.
appetite. Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of that actually probably goes to the Kelvin timeline movies for getting some new people interested. But
that's
there's
what
definitely
gets the praise.
Definitely an appetite there. Sadly, Dave is not able to join us. He had to go pick his mom up from the hospital. She had some surgery yesterday, but she's doing fine right now. If anyone is watching on YouTube and you want to comment, hope you're feeling fine, Mrs. Farabee, or just put Dave's mom if that's easier to spell. She would appreciate that. But Truck on the Tube and I are going to run through the 5 things we most want to see in Season 1 of Star Trek Lower Decks. We like doing these things here on Tex-Trek. They're very revealing of what someone really values in Star Trek when you find out what do they really hope to get out of a show. And since Dave wasn't able to make it, we might run through his list after we get done with ours. But I'd like to just go ahead and jump in and start with number 5. Would you like to go first, or do you want me to?
I can, whatever. I don't care. It's fine.
Since you're the guest, I'll let you go first.
All right. I do want to say that I have not made a top 5 list of what's most realistic in my desires. It's some of these things are probably way too out there, especially for a first season. I don't know if that's good, but anyway, these are things that I would love to see. Cameos from Janeway and Kim, so kind of the Voyager crew. That's my 5. All right. And I say Janeway and Kim specifically because I would love to see Admiral Janeway. I would love to see more of Admiral Janeway. And I have this joke where Ensign Kim is now captain, but people still call him Ensign, and I think that joke would suit Lower Decks so well. I would love to see Captain Ensign Kim call him or something.
Captain Ensign Kim. Oh no, Harry's got to get some respect someday.
That's what I'd love to see.
That's very similar to something I had on my list, but I'll probably save that until we get to it. But I would for sure want to see more Admiral Janeway after that little cameo in Star Trek Nemesis, which would have been like a year before Lower Decks.
She's still Admiral, I mean, I would assume.
Yeah, but she was dealing with like high-level stuff, like there's been like a coup in the Romulan government. Like she's not gonna be interacting with this little second contact ship.
Oh. Maybe she can send like another admiral, like a lower admiral, off to this Lower Decks ship.
Or what they could do is like a very traditional Star Trek trope, especially in the movies, would just be like, so Cerritos, you're the only ship in range, so we need you to go be the ones to deal with this. I mean, we wouldn't ask you if there was anyone else in the sector, but you're literally the only people ship we can go to. Yeah.
There was a garbage scow, but it was just out of range.
That'd be good. I'd like that. But yeah, I think Harry Kim would be a good one. I think he is the guy who knows what it's like to be an ensign for way too long.
He's the Lower Decks that's on the bridge, basically.
It's embarrassing that it took him 7 years to get promoted. And what always like bothered me about that is when Tom Paris got demoted to ensign for being bad. I won't spoil the episodes if someone hasn't seen that. But then they promote him back to lieutenant instead of like, why wouldn't you just promote Harry if you had like a slot open for someone to be a lieutenant again?
In defense of Voyager, I think there was a specific kind of unchanging hierarchy that Janeway probably wanted to keep. She wanted to keep that structure until they got home, I suppose. Because at the end of the trip, everyone would have been commander, right? So you got to keep like a hierarchy. And I think she just placed Paris back to where he was originally. It's like this, but yeah, he was the convicted felon that Kim deserved more respect.
But Tuvok could get promoted.
No, not Tuvok. He doesn't deserve it. He got kicked out of the first officer's chair too.
They made him a lieutenant commander. I'll just go ahead and drop my number 5 on y'all. The number 5 on my list is I want to learn more about Orions. We have never had an Orion regular character before. We are going to get one for the first time now with Ensign Tendi. And the thing with the Orions is they were pretty iconic in the original series. Like almost every episode in the end credits, they had the Orion slave girl show up in there. Yeah, so they have shown up in a lot of Star Trek shows, but we've never really learned much about them other than, they're kind of like pirates, or they're kind of like traders of sex slaves, or they're kind of like crime-based. But they're always like a little different. Like we see them in the original series, we see them in the animated series when they were called Orions. They were mentioned in Deep Space Nine. They talk about the crime syndicate. They show up in Discovery, but they're always like a little different, or like an Enterprise, or like all the men are like big bulky. Enterprise. Yeah, so every show kind of does them a little different and never really scratches beneath the surface too much. So I would love if there's like an Orion centric episode, or if she could just like occasionally like talk about like Orion culture or something. Since Mike McMahon is kind of like a big continuity guy, it would be cool if like he would not just clean some of that stuff up, but kind of like flesh some of it out.
Yeah. Often we kind of find things to be coherent in Star Trek, but it's just that we only have like kind of snippets of the whole picture, right? We only see like these small pieces, and sometimes it just takes a bit more kind of like working out, I suppose, smoothing the edges to get like the full story across. I would love to see it's Ensign Tendi. She's the Orion. I would love to know that like maybe her family, they're like crime lords or space pirates or something, and she's the only one that's got like a respectable, dare I say, career in Starfleet, and so she has to deal with that. Has to deal with the fact that everyone's just out there selling illegal dilithium crystals or whatever for their family.
That stuff that Clint Howard was sniffing with Tilly on Discovery.
The Discovery drugs, yeah.
Yeah.
On Kronos.
It would be interesting if they did something like that, or like maybe they do an episode where like they go visit her family, but they're like it's kind of like a crime mob, like mafia family, like The Sopranos. Like her dad is like Tony Soprano or something like that.
Yeah, that would be fun. I'd like that. All right, you want my number 4?
Sure, go for it.
All right. It's another cameo thing. This is why they're lower on the ranking. But this time I want a Pulaski cameo. I want a Pulaski. I know that Mike McMahon's a big TNG guy, and I'm an advocate for Dr. Pulaski. I prefer Pulaski to Beverly Crusher. And I think she didn't get enough screen time. I'd love to see her.
I'll agree with you. She didn't get enough screen time, and I kind of hate that character gets so much hate. But I don't know if I can agree I like her more than Crusher. But that would be interesting to see more of her. It would be hard to talk. What was the actress name? Diana Muldaur?
Do you think she can come back?
Well, she didn't have a great time on Next Generation and kind of like didn't want to come back. So, is she even still alive?
Diana Muldaur. Yes.
Yeah, she's 81. I don't know when the last time she acted in anything, but I would be all for bringing her back. I think that she was cool to be like the grumpy Dr. McCoy type doctor. And I kind of liked how there was like some sparks between like her and Data. Because it like totally makes sense from, her perspective to be like, we've seen so many like weird androids and stuff in the Star Trek universe. I'm not sure about this thing. You think it's for real human? And there would be an arc, where she would like learn to respect them, and they'd probably become buddies by the end of it. So I always thought she was kind of a neat character.
I felt like she was the most kind of realistic or relatable in terms of relationship with Data. Because not everyone is, I suppose, open and willing to just accept Data as a full-blown life form or as his own species. Maybe it'll take a couple of people time to adjust to and comprehend what kind of life form he is or how he functions exactly. And I like that kind of dynamic that they had. She wasn't disrespectful to Data, I found, in any way. She was just kind of puzzled, I guess, by his existence and trying to make heads and tails of it, I guess.
I think that's also like kind of a relatable thing that some people go through, where they might have a different like sexual orientation or ethnic background or something. Like they're around people, different religion, and if they're around people that like aren't used to that, there's kind of a learning curve that people go through. And like Dr. Pulaski could have been the analog of somebody like encountering someone like they're not used to, that they think is weird, but they kind of like go through an arc where they learn to accept and respect the person. So I think there's a lot of potential there, but I don't complain that Crusher came back though.
But I actually think that in the trial, like if we had kept Pulaski for multiple seasons, once we got that Data trial, I think that her testimony, if she had like basically testified that Data was indeed a fully sentient human being, he was his own life form and he had his own rights, I think that would have had so much weight to it, just because of the character arc that she could have had.
Oh, so if they had done like Measure of a Man later, because that was in season 2, that was when they had Pulaski.
Oh, was it?
They had like,
she wasn't there. Yeah. Oh, I put Measure of a Man like season 4. My God.
That's season 2. Yeah, it was like the first like great episode of Next Generation.
Oh, okay. Well then, yeah, do it later, but have Pulaski in there, I suppose.
That would be really cool. I would have dug that. But they kind of have the Dr. Tana character, who, what were people calling her on Twitter? Was it? I think it might have been you who started this, Dr. Bakatsky.
I was calling her like Pulkatsky or something. But I've seen other ones. I can't remember them, but I've seen other ones. But she does look basically like... She looks like a mix between like Pulaski, Bones, and a cat. All right?
Yeah. Yeah, like if Grumpy Cat was a doctor.
The meme. They put a meme in Star Trek. I'm down with that. But I would love to see Pulaski and the Doctor just go at it. You know.
Maybe they know each other.
Maybe they do. Maybe they're like old classroom mates, and they don't agree on how medicine should be done.
Well, I'm gonna give my number 4, which is also cameo related. But I think this is the only cameo thing I have. But mine is a non-TNG cameo. And the reason why I say non-TNG cameo is I'm pretty confident we're going to get some TNG crossover. It's probably going to be Riker or Troy because they're the people they always go to.
I assume Riker's going to be in the show. Like, it's a given to me. I would be surprised if he wasn't in the show.
Yeah, if not in season 1, then for sure in season 2. Because they might hold off till season 2.
Mm.
But I would really like to see someone beyond Next Generation, because we see Riker and DS9 and Troy and Voyager, both of them in Enterprise, both of them in Picard. We see Picard in Picard. We're gonna get Guinan back in Picard. I kind of want to bring in like some Deep Space Nine people or some Voyager people, like what we were talking about with Harry Kim. I think would be great. Or even if they could like visit the Deep Space Nine station, I would love that.
Amazing.
And like Quark is still there or something like that.
Fantastic.
Or you could have like a really old Sulu and get George Takei, since he's like already kind of a internet phenomenon, this comedy figure with like oh my, like bring in like old Sulu.
I recently watched, this is completely unrelated, but I recently watched The Terror seasons 1 and 2, and this is not a spoiler for the story, but they have George Takei say oh my because he's in season 2, and they have him say it, and it was just like, oh, they had to go there.
Of fun. What show?
The Terror.
I haven't seen that.
It's like a horror show, right? Ambiance kind of horror. And season 2 happens during the Second World War, and it deals with the concentration camps that the US set up for the Japanese kind of Japanese blood US citizens.
Yeah.
They put a lot of US citizens that were of Japanese descent in these concentration camps, so it deals with that. And so George Takei and a lot of other Japanese American actors are in there, and they have him say "Oh my," which I thought was hilarious.
Like a serious thing though, like that seems weird to use that if it wasn't like played for a joke.
It was more played for a joke. I think that there's someone making a food for him, and he's like, "Oh, you made these?" She's like, "Oh yeah, it's me." And he goes, "Oh my." He's like legitimately surprised that she's making this food for him because it was so good, right?
Huh. But not only could they bring in like Old Man Sulu, but they could also get like Old Man Chekhov with Walter Koenig.
Oh yeah.
I think Nichelle Nichols is kind of at a point in her life now where I don't think she's like healthy enough to work to do like the voice acting. But you could definitely get Chekhov or Sulu in there.
I think Cirroc
one last time
as writer Jake Sisko would be great. Like have Jake just kind of walk around the Cerritos for a while, documenting what's going on or something.
Oh yeah, like he's like a journalist doing like
Second Contact.
What's a day in the life of a lower deck officer on an unimportant Starfleet ship? Or like something like that. It's like you could like basically write that as like Mike McMahon like writing a character like himself. Like, okay, like I have to tell a story about these people. So what kind of stories could I tell? Like what's going on here? So it'd be a cool thing. It'd be a cool like writing exercise, I think. I would dig that. Let's move on to number 3. What do you got?
So this is my most serious one, and this is where my kind of continuity brain clicks in and my coherence brain clicks in. We've seen these trailers that we've seen. The main thing that bugs me with the trailers and the sneak peeks that we've seen so far for Lower Decks is probably the same issue I have with Picard. It's that it's not very well spoken, dare I say. Like the speech and how they speak is very contemporary. It's very 21st century. They use a lot of like colloquialisms and just kind of like I don't know, things and expressions that we say today, dude and bro and what have you. But that's never been the case in Star Trek before, nor was it the case in like the older Star Wars movies, that kind of stuff. And I think that having that kind of distance from the way we speak helps the shows remain timeless, and I think it's more believable. in the future, and so I hope that I'm hoping that the show is more like that. That it has more of this kind of distinguished speak to it. Um, Maybe not when the officers are kind of chilling together, I suppose, in their quarters. But if they're on a mission, I hope that they speak. They're kind of well spoken when they're dealing with these second contact scenarios and what have you.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we're gonna get that one or not because there's already been some stuff in the clips in the trailer that kind of felt off to me. Like when Mariner is like, "We live in a spaceship. No one's gonna die from a spear wound," and it's like, wouldn't you say starship instead of spaceship?
Mm.
Or
She's
like
also saying "dude" and what have you.
yeah. And when like she's whipping out the batleth and she's like can't remember what it's called, she's like, I don't know, I'm not a scientist. Who cares? It's like, yeah, that's like a very like modern type of humor.
Yeah. But I can sort of let that slide, I guess, with the lower deckers and with the humor aspect of it. I would just, at least if they were like when they're on those very professional kind of missions, when they're doing that important stuff, and everyone's on the bridge, maybe. But yeah, maybe we won't get that. I mean, Picard didn't give us that anyway, so. And that's not a comedy show.
Yeah, it's weird because I really like, say, the original series, for example, like kind of like the dialogue where they didn't like to use the word hell on TV in the 60s, like in City on the Edge of Forever when Kirk says, "Let's get the hell out of here" at the end. Like people were like up in arms about that. So, but a lot of times they'll say like, "What in the devil?" Or in when Kirk met Kang and he's like, "To the devil with you" or something like that. It's like I kind of like that weird, like very pulp 60s type retrograde sci-fi type dialogue. It's kind of fun, but at the same time, like I wouldn't want to write like modern Star Trek like that. I do kind of want to modernize some things, but. Yeah, I think like Berman era Trek, they had like a pretty good idea on how to keep things feeling normal to like a modern TV audience, but not making it so contemporary.
Yeah, like the most contemporary of like it was an Enterprise, but then that's because I guess they were closer to us.
Yeah,
so that made more sense.
it was
like
intentional.
Trip. Yeah,
I remember like reading interviews with Rick Berman before Enterprise came out, and he said that they are intentionally making the characters more like modern day people and less like Kirk and Picard.
Yeah, that makes more sense. I mean, it makes sense. Yeah.
But we'll see if there was a show where you would want to have like people seem a little bit more normal. I think it might actually be this one because that tracks with something Mike McMahon said that because this isn't the flagship, because this is kind of a generic ship you would just see in like the background of a starbase or something, that the people here will act a little bit more like normal real life people, I think.
Relaxed, I guess.
Yeah. They're not like the top of the top, the like flagship officers.
Maybe Strange New Worlds will have kind of some of that vibe to it.
Yeah, I think Strange New Worlds is going to be like the most traditional Star Trek show when it comes out. Which is funny for me. That is the one I am the most looking forward to. But I'm also like known for consistently saying Star Trek does not have to be a crew of people under a captain on a ship called the Enterprise out exploring. It can be all these other things. It should be all these different things. I have always said that. But yet the show I'm most excited for is the show that is that TOS TNG Enterprise style format.
I think it makes sense. Like I've always said that it's great that they're going in all these different directions. You got like all of these different shows. Section 31 might be more gritty. Discovery has these kind of big kind of universe saving plots. Everything's its own little thing. You got the adult comedy, a kids TV show. It's great, but I always think that even though we have all of these things, I think it would be nice to have the classic kind of episodic Star Trek, and I would have had that classic episodic Star Trek be the one to move the story forward rather than have it be Strange New Worlds. But I'm happy to have that. I like that as like a centerpiece to the Star Trek universe. Like, this is Star Trek. It's good people doing the best they can exploring Strange New Worlds, And then you can kind of world build and have all of these other shows with these different formats and develop kind of the grander, I suppose, story of Star Trek.
Yeah, kind of like the other Star franchise. I don't like to say the name of it on the podcast because we don't need to pay too much attention to them. We have
Starship
our
Troopers.
our own thing going on. We have the other Star franchise. They kind of did that. You can argue they didn't do it very well, but they did like their main trilogy of like new movies. And while they were doing that, they had all this spin-off stuff where they could do like Rogue One and Solo and The Mandalorian and Rebels and Resistance and what have you. So I like that mentality. Yeah, like do like your big flagship show, but also have all these other projects going on.
Yeah.
My number 3 is I want elaborate but appropriate visuals. And what I mean by that is a lot of the things that we don't see a ton of in the live action Trek will be a lot easier to do in animation. Like the more elaborate aliens, like the Tholians or the Gorn, those are harder to pull off in live action, but they'd be really easy to do in animation. So this is a good way to bring in more Tholians and Gorn. And do you remember the Antikins and I think the Soleil in TNG, that episode Lonely Among Us, like the dog people and the snake people?
Oh, wait, the dog
like
people.
Way back in season 1.
Wait, are you talking about the ones that Worf admires? The blue people?
No, they were like the green snake people, and then there's like the dog people, and they were like enemies with each other.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, okay.
And then I think like one of the snake people ate one of the dog people.
I was thinking because there's another episode with like there's like one species that comes on. They're like a kind of an aquatic. They look like Swamp
the
Thing
fish
blue.
People.
Yeah, fish people, and Worf is like he admires them for some reason.
Yeah. Oh, but like speaking of fish people, like you know the episode of the animated series, the ambergris element where they meet the Aquans on like that water planet.
Oh yeah.
And Kirk and Spock basically turn into Aquaman and the Submariner.
Basically, yeah. They take these they get gills or whatever.
But that's a great example of something like hard to do in live action. Like an underwater episode is an expensive thing to do. Like the Aquaman movie was like really expensive to do that live action. But you know, in animation, it'd be easy in something like Lower Decks to do those kind of stranger alien environments. My only concern would be I don't want it to get too crazy that it feels incompatible with the Star Trek universe we're familiar with.
Yeah, not over the top. If you want to do one species that's maybe like really small or really tall or they seem kind of really wacky, then that's fine. But maybe not every alien species of the week have them completely disproportionate. Because you want to be able to reuse the elements that Lower Decks integrates in later Star Trek. Like if you have a bigger budget, you want to do an episode, you can reuse something from the Lower Decks, from these animated shows. You don't want it to be like just completely out of hand.
Like those creatures at the beginning of Star Trek Beyond, those actually felt a little bit too cartoony for me. I think those are actually goofier than anything that was in the animated series.
That I got very, very animated series vibes from that. You know what? I think my favorite opening, or one of my favorite things from all of Trek, is from one of my least favorite movies, Into Darkness. Like the opening from Into Darkness and the way they deal with that planet and those species and like just the aesthetics of like the village. You know what I'm talking about? The white people with the red trees, and that's great. I love that. And I also love that they put the Enterprise underwater. I know people aren't big fans of that, but
that was so weird for me because when I was a little kid, I would like imagine my own Star Trek stories, and like if I was making the show, what I would do. Like, and one of the ideas I had is I would want to have like my own Enterprise, like a new Enterprise, but in one episode of that's like go underwater. And then I got a little bit older, and I was like, oh, that's a dumb idea. You can't do that.
And then they did it.
And then they did. There was like a bunch of stuff that had. Like I thought it would be cool if there was a character who had like a little fold out sword, like Sulu had in Star Trek 09. Or if there was like a captain who like listened to like a bunch of like modern day music, like I don't think I thought Beastie Boys specifically, but stuff like that. All this stuff, and then like when I was like a little bit older, when I was a teenager,
it's all Calvin timeline now.
Yeah, it was like all stuff like I dismissed. I was like, oh, that's like a dumb little kid idea. Like you couldn't do that for. J.J. Abrams did all that stuff.
It's all canon now.
Yeah. But I think like my litmus test with Star Trek Lower Decks about like getting too crazy with the animated concepts that you probably wouldn't see in live action. I don't want it to be crazier than the animated series. So if they can just rein it into that level, like if we're gonna do something as weird as like giant Spock or Kukulkan, that snake bird
That's awesome
thing, that's actually like from real mythology. Like that's an actual thing that like exists. But or the original series had a bunch of wacky stuff too. We have like Space Lincoln shows up, or like Apollo being a giant and grabbing the Enterprise with a green space hand. Just like stay under that level of weird, and we'll be okay.
Yeah, because that's not weird enough, right? That's. I like the way the animated series did their planet surfaces and kind of like landscapes, because they took it a step further than what the original series could ever do. Because you're just limited by, I suppose, not only budget, by just the equipment or like
the technology.
They
had to use like the same matte painting and the same foam rocks.
Yeah, I was gonna say that fake ass rock, but the animated series took it just a bit further, and then I suppose when TNG came back, they toned it down, because we're not very often on a planet surface anyway in TNG. Usually it's just the fake plants or the fake rocks. Sometimes they'll film a field or something. But yeah, like I would like Lower Decks to do that. Give us some kind of strange new worlds, like kind of environments that are kind of different and kind of peculiar to look at, but without going over the top and making it, I don't want it to be Rick and Morty looking. How everything is phallic and what have you when you get to a planet. Everything is obscene.
Yeah, I think the designs need to look like, oh, I can imagine that existing in like the live action Star Trek universe.
Yeah.
What do you have for your number 2?
So I hesitated a long time between which one would be 1 and which one would be 2. And so I think this is number 2 simply, but I want it to be 1, but it can't be because it's just, I don't think it'll ever happen. It's not realistic. So this is my number 2, but I would love to see a crossover between the animated series and Lower Decks that utilizes both styles of animation. I think it would be so amazing to, the same way Deep Space Nine, they went back in time and they were in the same style of the original series. I would love it if somehow Lower Decks found a way to go back to like the animated series, and they were in the style of the animated series, or maybe animated series characters got drawn into the Lower Decks kind of style of animation.
It should be Sulu and Chekhov.
That would be great if they had like Sulu and Chekhov drawn in the animated series style, but in Lower Decks or something, like just one way or the other, right? I would love that.
Yeah, especially since Chekhov didn't even get to be in the animated series. They need to put him in Lower Decks just for that.
That would like canonically fit him into the animated series.
Yeah, the idea of like doing kind of a throwback to the animated series and like showing that time period and those types of designs. I've actually heard like some people talk about how they would like to do this. I think one way you could do it though is if you're at a planet that maybe like Starfleet has visited before or something, and you show like a flashback to like the last time the ship was here, and it's like a flashback to like that Kirk era in the 23rd century, and you animate that to look like the animated series.
Oh yeah, okay. The way sometimes like CG animation full feature films, sometimes they'll do like a flashback or an explanation sequence, and that'll be in a completely different animation style, right? It'll be like a 2D or just a paper kind of thing. Yeah. Or
I don't know if you're into Doctor Who at all, or if you're familiar with Doctor Who.
I get bugged by everyone to watch it continuously, but
I'm not gonna bug you to watch it, but they did put out a Doctor Who Star Trek crossover comic book, and it had one of the modern Doctors meet Picard and the crew of the Enterprise D, but then they flashed back to something that happened in the 23rd century, And when they did that, they had a different artist do the art, so it looks very different. But they also used an older Doctor from the 70s, Tom Baker, and it was him in the original series era. So I thought that was like a cool use to use like literally older designs to represent like that time period in a modern medium.
Mm. Yeah, and I think like it's easier to do that. Like the old argument of Discovery, we can't do the original series aesthetics because it won't work. The '60s, what have you. Be that whether you agree with that or not, that argument is kind of moot when it comes to animated. Like you can animate things in any style that you want, I guess, and especially if it's just like a flashback sequence, it can be fun.
Yeah. And it's also easier if your fear is having things like look old that like a modern audience won't connect to. It's easier to justify that for one episode, especially if like the point of the episode is like, oh, look at like this stuff from back in time, it's older era, bygone era. You can justify it a lot more there than if that's just going to be like your normal look every week.
And I'm pretty sure you can. I'm not gonna say animate because I would say you update. I would say you draw and design everything as it was from the original series, right? But it would still look kind of fresh and new, I guess, because you're animating it today. It wouldn't look as it was specifically. You just try and make it feel like it was, I guess.
Yeah. Well, the animation on this show is like really good from what we've seen in the trailers and the clip and stuff.
Fluid, yeah.
Yeah, like it looks great. Like they put a good bit of money into this. I think the production studio or the animation studio, Titmouse, that did this, they do a lot of Adult Swim type shows.
Okay.
And this looks better than like most of the shows they've made, like Venture Brothers or Metalopocalypse or some of that type of stuff. Like this looks great compared to that stuff. Like you can tell, like this is like the high budget one.
Oh well, this looks. I mean, this is on par with the big ones, be it The Simpsons or Family Guy, Rick and Morty, Final Space. This is
So my number 2, I want Trek logic, not cartoon logic, and I'm not sure if I'm going to get this one all the time. But I want whatever happens on the show to make sense within the Star Trek universe. I understand this is an animated comedy, and they, probably want some of that freedom that cartoon style of stuff provides. I know from just the stuff we've seen already, it's going to have like that fast-paced, jokey, animated comedy style where it's kind of just like boom, 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 hitting you with like the dialogue or. The characters are going to move more like manically and fluidly, and like in the clip where Mariner pulls Boimler out of the closet into the corridor, and they kind of like both like fall on the ground and like roll on the ground and stuff. You probably wouldn't do that in live action, and I don't want like that type of physicality to get too weird that it doesn't seem like. Oh, I could totally picture like real people doing that, and also like the dialogue, how like that fast paced, jokey dialogue that is kind of not quite how people talk in real life. I kind of want that stuff to be reined in a little bit, and you're just like the characters to behave believably, and I don't want the stories to get crazier than typically we would see in Star Trek.
Yeah. Fair enough. I can understand that. I would argue that, and I don't know yet, and based on the clips that we're seeing, maybe not. I think that the clips that they're showing us, they want them to be that kind of fast paced, and they want that humor because you gotta get the jokes and the punchlines and everything across in a very short amount of time, right? When you're showing these sneak peeks.
Yeah.
But I would think that as a creator, Mike McMahon has a creative outlet to do everything that is just way too far out for Star Trek. He has Solar Opposites, and he's a co-creator on that show, and I think he has the ability to just like, if this is too crazy for Star Trek, if it's if the characters or whatever's going on, he can put that in Solar Opposites, and he can keep Star Trek Lower Decks as Star Trek, dare I say, as possible. Especially considering he has such a respect for Star Trek, and I recently shared a video on Larry Nemechek's channel where him and Larry Nemechek are talking about stardates, and he's like, Mike McMahon's, he knows all about stardates, and he's just diving into it like a hardcore crazy
That made me laugh. Yeah,
Oh,
because
he's hilarious.
he tells Larry, I've been thinking a lot about Stardates lately, and Larry is like, well, you're the only one. And it's like, yeah, they drop the ball on Stardates all the time, but that's a Star Trek tradition. But I do trust McMahon. I have really liked everything he said about the shows. The clips and the trailers don't always reflect what he's said, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt until I see something contrary to that in the actual show. But he has mentioned multiple times about like he doesn't want to break the universe. He wants things to work. And I do have an exception to rule number 2 that because I might be kind of a stickler with like I want it to feel like Star Trek and not feel like a cartoon. I have like a loophole, a way around that when we talk about my number 1, I'll bring it up. But it'll be a way for me to be more forgiving and kind of cut on more slack where that stuff is concerned.
Ooh.
But I want to hear your number 1. So what's the thing you want to see most in Star Trek Lower Decks Season 1?
Phylosians. Do you know what that is? It's the plant people from the animated series.
Yes. I would like to see them. I almost mentioned them. I couldn't think of the name of the race, though, when I was talking about how I want elaborate visuals. But yeah, so you want like a sequel to Infinite Vulcan, basically?
Yes, I don't need Giant Spock, and I don't need all of that, but just it's the only, from what I remember, plant species in Star Trek, and their design is so crazy, but I think realistic enough to be able. You could even do them in live action, I think. Maybe with like a bit of CG enhancements if you do like some makeup on them. But Lower Decks is animated, so you could just animate them again. I want to see.
Yeah.
I want to see more of them. I think they're such an intriguing species, and for once, they're not an outright asshole people, right? I feel like they could become friends or part of the Federation. You know what I mean? Something like that.
Yeah, I would be down to see them. I think there's a lot of funny jokes you could tell with them because they're kind of a funny visual just in and of
They're
themselves.
like a fungi, aren't they? Of some kind?
Well,
Are they a mushroom or are they a plant?
They're a plant.
Both.
But you could make plant jokes.
Yeah.
I don't know what they would be. I can imagine you could make them if you have like a room full of comedy writers thinking about it.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I mean, just visually they look kind of funny.
Yeah.
In the animated series, they don't look funny per se because the animated series doesn't play up the comedy aspect of it. But if you were to put them in a Lower Decks kind of environment, I'm sure, yeah. Like, I would love to have one of them as like a crew member.
That would be good. That would be unexpected. I wouldn't see that coming.
He's like the chef. Maybe he's like the chef or something on the.
Oh, what if he's like the chef, but he's like the opposite of like a vegetarian? Like he's like offended if you're eating a plant. And he's so like he's like, let me interest you in like my low carb menu I have here, and it's all just like meat based stuff.
He's got alternatives to the plant. Like we have alternatives to meat. He has alternatives to plants. He's got like have this instead of the spinach, and he's got like this meat thing.
Yeah, it's just like some type of like grounded up meat or something
instead of your carrots or whatever.
Yeah, that'd be funny. I would be into that. I like that. That's a very surprising number 1. I would not have guessed that.
Yeah, well,
I
mean, the Phylosians have a lot of things have captured my imagination while watching the animated series, and I really fell in love with that show. It's the last Star Trek I watched, but I fell in love with it. And these guys, I was just like, I think I rewatched the episode multiple times, and I was like, I need to see more of these guys. They're just so great.
In an episode written by Walter Koenig.
Oh, really? I must have forgotten that. I probably read it back when I watched it.
Yeah, that was the one way they got him included in the animated series is by letting him write an episode, and he actually like hated the writing process because he had to like rewrite it so many times. And
yeah, I imagine so.
The end product that they got was so weird. With you have it felt like 3 different ideas at the same time. You have like the plant people, and you have like a giant Spock, and then you have like this guy from the eugenics war.
You got him. Yeah, it's a great episode. It builds on so much things, and then there's Giant Spock, which, come on, you gotta love your Giant Spock. But that's how the animated series feels, though. It feels like just so many ideas, doesn't it?
If you did want to pay homage to the animated series, though, and you also want to be kind of like the wacky, silly Star Trek show, but at the same time, you want to be the show that uses the continuity. You could check all those boxes. You could do all that stuff by bringing those people back. That would be like your big tribute to the animated series, and kind of the episode that people consider, like the most ridiculous of the animated series. You'd be kind of saying like, we're not ashamed of this. We're not ashamed of our history. We're not ashamed of
Megas 2.
That's one of my favorite episodes of Star Trek ever. Because I'm such a metalhead. I'm such a metalhead, and I like when I watch that, I'm like, oh my god, this writer Larry Brody, he was like totally like listening to Sabbath and just like jamming out to some Tony Iommi guitar and Ozzy on vocals.
You reckon it's the most metal Star Trek episode that there is out there?
Without a doubt. Like they meet the devil, and like when they meet him, he's like handing like an apple to like Dr. McCoy, and
in the center of the universe.
Yeah. I love that. I love that episode so much. Spock draws a pentagram on the floor. Come on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, bring back Lucian.
It was crazy.
Kirk his name was Lucian. Hey, Kirk might be a jerk, but he saved the devil.
Yeah. They had holodecks, too, in the animated series. Or the recreation room, or whatever it was.
Yeah, the rec room. But, we know we're going to get holodecks in Lower Decks.
Oh, yeah.
That was one of the things that, who's the Boimler actor? The Meg Ryan's son. What's his name? Quaid? Jack Quaid?
Jack Quaid. He's the guy, yeah. He's the main character in The Boys as well.
Yeah, he teased at their Comic-Con panel that there's going to be some holodeck shenanigans.
I feel like everything Borg related that we've seen so far is just holodeck.
Yeah, could be. But when I was talking about the trailer on a live stream with Dave and Brian and Boatwreck and Starfleet Boy, we kept saying, like, this is a little weird, but maybe it's on the holodeck. And I was like, come on now, this can't all be on the holodeck.
I don't know. I think the Borg thing is, though. We'll see.
Yeah, it could have been like a training exercise. We're going to find out very soon. The show is going to be out in a few days.
I feel like those were like the 3 first episodes anyway, so.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and drop my number 1.
All right.
The thing I want most out of Star Trek Lower Decks Season 1, I want the show to make me laugh. I want it to be funny. I want to laugh out loud every episode at least one time.
Wow. I mean, that's a big ask.
I don't think that's a big ask. Like, I think that's reasonable for like a comedy show. I mean, there's been a lot of good like funny stuff I've watched lately. Like the Harley Quinn animated show that I thought would be terrible was actually like really good. I haven't watched a ton of Rick and Morty, but what I have watched I really enjoy. Like, there's like a lot of like good comedy out. Like, people know how to write this format really well. I want this to be up there with some of the best. I want it to be.
How prone are you to actually laugh out loud while watching a show? Very?
It depends. I can if it's something that like I get plugged into, then I'm going to be more likely to laugh out loud. And I think because this is Star Trek, I'm already going to have like that extra layer of investment.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like the trailer made me laugh out loud.
Okay.
I think twice actually.
Right.
So I don't think that's that big of an ask, but I don't know. I don't know if maybe I'm an easy mark for them. But the reason why I want it to make me laugh, the reason why I want it to be funny is because that's going to make me more forgiving if things go against what I said for number 2. If it does get to be a little bit more cartoony than Star Trek, I'm going to accept it and look the other way and just enjoy it if I think it's funny enough that it kind of gets a pass, you know?
Yeah, okay. I mean, there are shows nowadays like What We Do in the Shadows. What We Do in the Shadows was originally a movie. It's a mockumentary about vampires living in New Zealand by Taika, the guy who did Thor Ragnarok. And they've spun that off basically into 2 shows. There's Wellington Paranormal, which is a kind of an underground New Zealand show, and then there's What We Do in the Shadows, the American TV show. And those 2 shows get legitimate laughs out of me. Like, they're so wacky and so just like crazy, and the characters are so dumb that I get laughs out of it.
I've heard good stuff.
So yeah, like there are shows that can get me to laugh, and I laugh at Family Guy. I know some people don't, but I think that Family Guy it's got those jokes that crack me up sometimes. So yeah, I'm not expecting to laugh though. I'm not expecting to have like laugh out loud moments. But that's not a. I'm very content with just sitting there smiling, being happy at a show, which is what most comedy shows do to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's reasonable. And I think as long as you're having a good time and you're accepting the humor and you're not like rolling your eyes at it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like if they come out with like a bunch of like lame jokes about how like, oh, the Enterprise 1701 visited this planet. I wonder how many broads Kirk knocked up, or you just like that very like low level, like the cliche Star Trek type humor that we've all heard 1,000 times. Like, do better than that. You know, because like if it's that type of stuff that I'm gonna be like rolling my eyes at, then I'm gonna get really annoyed. And then like if something goofy happens, I'm gonna be like, this is dumb.
Yeah,
I don't think that'll be the case, but that's kind of worst case scenario.
And the like lubing the turbo lifts, that kind of joke, those aren't the jokes that I'm looking for. Like that's, I'm not gonna say it's too lowbrow, but I don't know, is it potty humor? But anyway, that's not the jokes that I'm looking for, but I'm expecting them to have like some character built jokes that kind of develop over time.
Yeah,
character comedy.
I mean, like, these people seem funny. Like, yeah, Boimler. Like, he's, like, the dork who, like, cares way too much and still is gonna, like, get nervous and be neurotic about it and
the dynamic
do it wrong.
is very Rick and Morty. I find between Mariner and Boimler, right? Rick is this old grandpa dude that knows everything about the universe, and he's always dragging Morty along with him that's kind of clueless to everything and very innocent and naive. And I feel like it's kind of the same thing. Mariner, she kind of, not that she's the captain or anything, but she's been out there already. She kind of knows things, and she doesn't really care. She's kind of like, I'm going to get drunk on my spaceship. And Boimler's kind of I want to do things right. He's hesitant. I feel there's that kind of dynamic. But it's proven to work, because even in Solar Opposites, Terry and Corvo, which are the two main, they're kind of the same.
Yeah, and you kind of have, like, your straight man and Screwball, kind of like that old traditional style of comedy, like going all the way back to, like, Abbott and Costello. If any of my listeners are, like, old enough to, like, if for those of you in, like, your 80s out there, what do you call it, octogenarians or whatever, like, who remember, like, Abbott and Costello, but not exactly like that, but it's a similar dynamic, where you have, like, yeah, like, they're very reactionary to one another, like, these personalities that you see with, like, a Rick and Morty, or with Mariner and Boimler, these all seem to be, like, a little different, but it has kind of, like, that same back and forth energy that is probably great for writing comedy.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, since we're talking about, you know, stuff making us laugh, out of the material that we've already seen, just like the little bit of stuff, what is the funniest, or some of the funniest things that you've seen so far that you liked?
I've been singing the Blast Shield song for a week now.
Yeah.
Blast shield. I'm at work going, it goes up and it comes down. I don't know why, it just got stuck in my head. I liked the batleth joke. I gotta be honest. I like it's a bat. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I'm fine with the delivery of that. I think it's great. The reference to Martok, like I got it from a Klingon with an eye patch. I feel like it's a direct reference to Martok, but then I'm like,
I don't think that's Martok.
But I'm assuming there are thousands of Klingons with eye patches, right?
Right, like Chang.
Like, yeah, we've already got multiple Klingons with eye patches. I would love it if it's Worf. She managed to steal it from Worf. Worf now has an eye patch.
Could be. I think we might get some of those TNG cameos, so maybe we will see Worf here. And then Michael Dorn doesn't have to go through the makeup, so he'd probably be more keen to do a Lower Decks cameo than do a Picard cameo.
Anyway. Just to get behind the mic, he'll do the makeup anyway.
Just to get in character.
Full Worf.
I think, like, the funniest thing for me is like it wasn't so much like the Batleth joke, but like when she's doing like her Klingon like I love honor, I demand honor. I thought it like went a little too far when she like sliced into his leg like that, and it was like kind of cartoony blood shooting out. But everything up until then, I was laughing at. I thought like the when she shot the phaser set to kill on accident, and it was kind of like, oh shit! It was like, it was such a stun. Like that made me laugh out loud. So
the final thing that they just dropped recently. They just dropped the thing.
Yes,
that was funny. I like that. She's like, how many planets? I bet you've only been to 4 planets, and Boyda's like, I've been to 5. Can I count Vulcan? No, you can't count stupid Vulcan. That's like counting Earth. And he's like, and I laughed at the thing. He's like, but I counted Earth. He's like, oh, sad. He's been to 5 planets, but he's counted Earth and Vulcan.
No, I loved that too, because that felt like realistic dialogue that I could imagine people in the Star Trek universe like having. Yeah. Like, you know, like when like Jake and Nog would be kind of like joking around. It was like a scene
the banter
written
that they
for
had
comedy.
When they were talking about girls, when they were sitting on the, on the station, and they were talking about there's all these new Bajoran girls that were coming in from the surface and what have you. They would have that kind of dialogue, right?
Or when they were talking about money, when Jake is like, I'm a human, I don't have any money. We work to better society. And Nog is like, what does that even mean?
What does it mean?
Yeah. Like that type of stuff. Those are the type of jokes I'm looking forward to in Lower Decks. I'm hoping that we get a lot of that type of stuff.
And I think it's humor that works if you don't know Star Trek. But if you do know Star Trek, it has that extra layer that you can kind of relate to and you feel comfortable with.
Yeah. It is kind of like fan servicey to say that I like this, but I mean, I'll just be honest. Like, I like when they do the deep cut stuff that kind of like rewards me for being a fan, for like knowing all this.
There is a line between fan service and world building, I think, and it's easy to cross over from one to the other. But as a fan, also, sometimes you need to accept that it is world building and that it's enhancing your experience, right? Then it's not just there to say, oh look, Spock, right? Because if you put Spock in a show, then you're like, okay, it could be fan service because they want to draw people in with Spock. But when you start putting like the Telosians in, not everyone knows about the original series or the Cage. Not everyone's that deep cut.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that like the Telosians was necessarily fan service. I think it was just that's in Discovery. I think it's just like it's world building and storytelling.
The only time that I ever really like complain about something being fan service is if it just feels very like inorganic, like
Spock and Into Darkness,
or
they
just
Skype call him randomly.
That actually didn't bother me that much because maybe I was happy
like
to see
Nimoy.
Nimoy. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, when it feels like obviously contrived to just like bring in the Enterprise or bring in such and such character. I think largely Star Trek kind of avoids that type of stuff, and when we do see these familiar elements, most of the time it's in a pretty like organic, natural way that doesn't really distract from the story and kind of just adds to it. But that's what I'm looking for is that type of callbacks to the just. As Larry Nemechek would say, using the canon.
Yes, using it. Building on it.
Oh, a good example is I think Star Trek Picard actually handled a lot of that stuff pretty well, especially in like the earlier episodes of Picard, like bringing in like that classic Romulan bird of prey design in the 4th episode, and there were a lot more smart uses of the canon. The radiation weapon that Narek used on Soji, it looks like the Star Trek Nemesis weapon. Little things like that. They feel like smarter uses of the canon than, say, like a Tribble on Lorca's desk.
Yeah, which feels more like just an Easter egg to have an Easter egg. It's kind of like having like an R2-D2 floating around in space, right? It's like, oh, you just put that there to get the lols. Or the Gorn skeleton. It's like a what did Lorca come over with a Gorn skeleton when he crossed over from the Mirror Universe? Was he holding one? Yeah,
is that a Mirror Universe Tribble?
Oh my god! Did they reproduce more or not at all?
They made a toy of the Mirror Universe Tribble and it has like teeth on it.
Okay. Does it come with a small agony booth?
And instead of like the little tag I have one somewhere, but like the little tag that comes with it, or the back of the box or somewhere, it says like instead of like hating Klingons, they like love Klingons, but they hate everything else.
That's nice.
But that's all of our top fives. And just before we close off, I do want to run through this list that Dave sent us with the 5 things he hopes to see in Star Trek Lower Deck Season 1. I'm just going to run through these real quick and maybe see if they overlap. I actually haven't read these yet, so it's going to be a surprise to me. But number 5, Dave says he wants drama. He wrote like a little description here. I'm not going to go into all of it, but basically like amongst all the laughs, he wants to have like some real drama to ground stuff to like kind of connect to. I agree with him. I think that it would be a good thing to have. He says for number 4, cool action. And then he goes on to say Star Trek isn't Star Wars, but it has had some great action scenes over the decades. So, yeah, with animation, we were talking about how that does kind of free you up to do stuff that would be hard to do in live action. So, good opportunity for some cool action.
The Hulk-looking creature. It looks like a
Planet
Hulk fight.
Or the zombies.
Yeah.
When they get in kind of a zombie fight in the trailer. So, yeah, they could do cool stuff with that. Number 3, I really like this one. He says, blue-collar advocacy. And then, like, he goes on to explain that, and he says that sounds preachy, but what he means is he doesn't want Lower Decks to kind of, like, show, like, the people doing the low-level jobs as losers.
Yeah.
And, it needs to remind you that, those people who do, like, those essential jobs, have dignity and are important, and it shouldn't just be, like, making fun of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he says, I don't really want any Star Trek show about losers. And I agree with that. At number 2, he says, weird guest stars.
Okay.
And so people like other than Patrick Stewart or Jonathan Frakes. One of the things he says is the sludge that killed Yar. Okana as an aging player. Remember the outrageous Okana?
Yeah.
He has the 1990s Sarah Silverman from Voyager as an example. The grandchildren of George and Gracie from Star Trek 4, the 2 humpback whales they went back in time and got.
Oh my god.
and then he says, and for God's sake, let sassy at real life Marina Sirtis show Troy cutting loose and being a bit more like what she's like. I actually think Marina Sirtis is really funny in real life, so if she did show up in Lower Decks, I would love it if they could let her like do some comedy.
We often talk about how it's never shown on screen, but canonically there's supposed to be like dolphins on the Enterprise D. There's like a dolphin room, and they talk about it. I think that Geordi mentions it once to like the Ferengi. He's like, "Did you see the Cretaceous room or whatever it is?" It would be great to see them. Maybe they don't have them on the lower deck, like on the unimportant ships, but it would be nice to see like they have to go and deal with officers on the USS Enterprise, and we all think it's going to be Picard or Riker or something, but no, it's just the dolphins, and they have to communicate with them.
That reminds me of Darwin, the dolphin, on the show Sequest. That was basically Star Trek, but underwater.
I've heard about that. So Hale talks about that.
Yeah, it wasn't very good in my opinion. I remember seeing it on TV in the 90s as a kid, and I'm like, this is a ripoff of Star Trek, except they're underwater instead of in space.
Yeah, look, that's how I felt about Stargate. And I was like, this is just... Every episode is just an episode of Star Trek, but reskinned.
I never got into Stargate either, but... I'm not gonna bug you about Doctor Who. So, like, a lot of people like want me to watch Stargate. I'm like, I ain't got time for that. I watch Star Trek. I rewatch.
It's too much Star Trek now. It's all coming out. So,
the number one thing that Dave hopes to see in Star Trek Lower Decks Season 1, he says, "Don't fuck things up for serious Trek." And then he goes on to complain about the short Trek Trouble with Edward. He really didn't like that.
Yeah, I didn't like that either.
He didn't like that it kind of like changed some of like the Tribble continuity with, how like Edward like basically created what we think of as the Tribble.
Yeah, I agree with him. Good on you, Dave.
He says he doesn't want a one-off gag about the piece of the action planet, like the Iosians that like became the Chicago gangsters.
Yeah.
He says like he doesn't want like a joke about what if they got a copy of 50 Shades of Grey, and I guess they all turned into like weird BDSM nymphos. I don't know. I've never read 50 Shades of Grey, but
Yeah.
I guess that's what he was going for.
The only Shades of Grey I know is the TNG episodes. Yeah.
But yeah, he says that he wants the comedy to not be too silly, but still be funny. And he cites the episodes A Piece of the Action and The Trouble with Tribbles from the original series. He says they aren't super funny, but the writing is good, and that's where like the jokes come from. So that's what he's wanting. And he says, "Don't make me gnash my teeth." Dave is kind of like a picky guy with comedies in general. So, whereas I say like if something makes me laugh, I'm more likely to forgive it. I don't know with him. Like it would have to be like really funny to make him forgive some of the stuff.
Then it's a big success, right? If this show manages to really surprise him in positive ways.
Yeah, if we get through the end of the season and Dave is first off, if he still watches it like all the way through. Okay. If he doesn't like drop out, but if he sticks with it all 10 episodes and says he has a good time, then
that's a success.
Yeah, that's like a high level of success.
Wow.
But sorry Dave couldn't be here to defend his opinions himself. I had to be like, I guess like the arbiter of his opinions. I hope I represented him fairly and accurately. I'm sure he'll be around soon to let us know how I did. But to all of my listeners and viewers out there, thank you for tuning in, and I want you to let us know what you hope to see the most in Lower Deck Season 1. We're going to be covering this every week. We're going to, react to each episode. We are thinking about doing those live. We're trying to, schedule that and see if it works. But, if people out there are, excited about watching a live stream where we're discussing this each week, let us know. And if you can cite some things that you hope to see this season in Lower Decks, we might bring those up in our next podcast when we'll be discussing Star Trek Lower Decks premiere episode Second Contact, which will be out in a few days. And I want to thank you, Trek on the Tube, for being so generous with your time and taking the time to talk about this with me. And I can tell that you're really eager for this, and I hope that it lives up to your expectations.
Oh yeah, I'm trying to kind of underhype myself a bit, just because you don't want to be so excited that when it comes out it's still good. But so I'm trying to regulate that. I'm like, I'm sure it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be okay.
Have you bought any Lower Decks merch yet?
Oh well, yes and no. I had Starfleet Boy because we can't buy them in Canada from the StarTrek.com website. So Hale had to buy me a shirt and a mug and send them over, but then they got blocked in customs. So it's a whole thing. And I wanted to pre-order. I wanted to buy the special T-shirt collection that they just released. They did this. They've done the special collection where they're gonna be selling 10 or 11 shirts. Each shirt designed by a different artist that works on the show. It's great. It's awesome. But it would come to 320 Canadian dollars with shipping for me for 10 shirts, and I can't do that. So
yeah, it's a lot.
So I'll be getting my shirt and my mug from Starfleet Boy. Hopefully before the show begins.
The shirt with the show logo. Yeah, I'm actually wearing it for people listening to this. I'm wearing the Lower Decks t-shirt.
Hopefully I'll get that one for my first review.
Well, good luck with that. That's the price you pay for living in the strange wilderness world of Canada. Wilderness.
Yeah, what is this place? We got no CBS All Access.
And you're going to be covering Lower Decks weekly, I'm sure, as well, right?
Oh yeah, I'm going to be doing weekly reviews for that. I've put everything else on hold because I can't handle multiple videos per week. But I'll be doing one review each week, and I don't release it the same day. A lot of people do. I can't do that. I release it maybe a week after, or the following Monday, because they'll be released on Thursdays, I think. So I'll be doing my reviews. They'll be coming out Mondays, Tuesdays, something like that.
Cool. Well, everyone needs to listen to Tex-Trek. Everyone needs to watch Trek on the Tube and enjoy Lower Decks, and hopefully we all like it.
Indeed.
At the end of the season, we'll have to compare our top 5 list again and see if we got what we wanted or not. But I'll go ahead and sign us off now. Again, thank you everyone for checking us out. Hope to see you around next time. And until then, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.
Live long and prosper.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek. And follow Fatheree on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you and take care.